Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Mind Movers. Today we have a budding entrepreneur who I had the pleasure of meeting at a founders dinner, Levi Levenfiche, who is one of the co-founders of Perfect TED, a company that produces Europe's first matcha-powered energy drinks. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, you can see Payman's got it right in front of him. The business was created alongside his brother Teddy and his wife. Is it Marissa?
That's correct.
Yeah, that's correct. Great. And ultimately, they had a mission to provide a natural, clean alternative to typical energy drinks using matcha as the primary ingredient. Levi is an extremely successful entrepreneur who inspired me during our dinner, and I thought it'd be incredible to hear about his journey because I know a lot of dentists want to know about how you get to where you have got to, especially at your age. You very kindly said that me and Payman were entrepreneurs. We're on different generations, but it took us a little bit longer. But I'm really looking forward to delving into your journey. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Amazing. So I always like to start from the beginning, and I know you told me, but I want my audience to hear. So let's talk a little bit about your backgrounds, where you grew up, and what you were doing before the brand was founded.
Yeah, cool. So I grew up in Northwest London.
Same.
I'm local. Not that exciting of a childhood. Went to UCS, rival school to Payman. He was at Highgate. And I guess grew up healthy, playing football. I'm one of four boys, very close to my brothers. One lives in the US now, one is my co-founder, and the other one actually just moved to the US last week. So we're a very close family. I moved to the US when I was 18. I didn't know anyone there, but I got into Penn in Philadelphia, and it was an amazing opportunity, chiefly because it's a great school, but also because my parents didn't go to university. And so growing up, the whole thing was education, opportunities that they didn't have, they wanted me to take up. So went to the US at 18, studied there for 4 years, worked in New York for a year, didn't get my visa, got deported, moved back to the UK, COVID hit. At this point, I was long distance with my then girlfriend, now wife, Marissa. She was in New York, she's American. I was in London. And during COVID, she decided to move over and do a master's at Imperial. She moved I was living with my brother, Teddy, who was also my co-founder. And we had such a good setup. Bachelor pad, it was just, I would say I wasn't single, but it was epic.
Yeah.
And it was just the two of us, and we were just like, during COVID, just a great time.
Basically, you were having parties without anyone knowing.
Well, no comment. But Marissa moved, which was amazing. We're very excited about her moving, but it came with like 12 suitcases of clothes and shit. And that kind of changed everything. So no more partying or undercover partying.
Yeah.
And Marissa started her master's at Imperial. Teddy was working for Bain as a management consultant, and I was working at the time in real estate private equity. And we were all working from home. Marissa was working kind of part from home, part at Imperial. And we started the business at our kitchen table.
I love that. Before we delve into the business, there's a few things that I've picked up on which I think were really interesting. That your parents came from a background of not having gone to university, but were very keen for you to go to university. Mm-hmm. Why do you think that was? I mean, did they struggle when they were growing up, and did they feel they were perhaps not given enough opportunities because they didn't go to university?
100%. So my grandparents came here as Holocaust survivors with nothing. Nothing beyond nothing. And so there wasn't even the opportunity to go to school, even though my parents are wicked smart. My mum in particular is a genius, and she actually works for the business now, which is amazing. Both of them could have gone to university, but they just didn't have the opportunities to do so. My mum had to leave school and support family, and my dad left school at 16. But I think as a result of that, and in the world we live in today, it's very different to how they were decades ago. I think they really wanted us to be educated in ways that they never had the opportunity to be. So they always push education first, and they never ever shied away from giving us opportunities in education, whether it's through sport or whether it was at school. It was always like education first, which is probably quite a Jewish trait. And I think you see the same in Asian families too.
And Middle Eastern.
And Middle Eastern families.
What did your parents do?
My dad is in real estate, property. And my mum raised 4 crazy boys. And that was it. And she does a lot of charity work. And now for the first time in 31 years, they're empty nesters. And they live in the same house we grew up in, but they have a lot more freedom now, probably financial freedom, but also freedom to move around the world and do things that they couldn't as parents of 4 boys. But my mum's job was probably the hardest job ever, because she just had 4 boys running around the house, doing a million different things, breaking bones, not really breaking hearts, but breaking bones.
I'm sure there was some heartbreak.
Did you always think you were going to start a business, or was there this idea that you were just going to go through the corporate ladder and something changed?
It's an interesting question, because when you go into education, education is so central to your story.
Yeah.
Typically, the back end of education is more institutional corporate life, whether it's becoming a lawyer, a doctor, whatever it is. So me and my brothers all started in corporate, and so did Marissa. I went into real estate private equity, Teddy went into management consultancy, and Marissa started in real estate private equity as well. So then my older brother works at Facebook or Meta. And so we were like really quickly pushed towards corporate life, even though my parents in their own right were kind of entrepreneurs in their own sense, because they came with nothing. So I probably have an entrepreneurial itch and bones in my body through them. But I don't know, I also feel like when you come out of university, you have no idea what you're doing. And I had no idea what I was doing. And my dad was always like, you don't need to know what you're doing. Just learn, absorb, be a sponge. And that's kind of how I feel when we hire people now, is they don't need to necessarily be the best in the world in their field, particularly if they're young individuals. They just need to be really keen to learn and grow. And that's kind of how I felt when I left school.
So my question is, though, after them pushing so hard for an education, and usually an education, as you said, does lead to a more corporate job, something that is very risk averse, financially stable, how did they react when you suddenly were like, hey, mum and dad, I'm going to leave this really secure situation and, have a startup and like live on the sofa for a bit?
We managed to get some financial security because I was living at home a bit, but we were well paid working for American firms. And we weren't, although the business has raised very little money and we didn't have a massive trust fund to just build whatever business we wanted, we had some financial security from savings that we'd built up. And the business wasn't just like all of us quit our jobs and just like start. It was very much a work in progress. And actually Marissa was doing her master's, so she had time to build out the business. Teddy resigned before I did. And then I actually only joined the business full time about 6 months ago.
Oh, wow.
So although the business is coming up to 3 years old, I worked essentially 2 jobs for the first 2.5 years. So it was me making money and funding the business with my paychecks. And I think on Dragon's Den, Teddy referred to me as, maybe it was Peter Jones referred to me as Sugar Brother. That's what I was.
Brother.
I was a Sugar Brother.
I've been
I
called
was
Sugar
funding
Mummy.
the business.
It's cool.
It's fine. It's all good. And that was my role. I mean, besides doing all the admin bullshit in the business that couldn't be done because Teddy and Marissa were doing a million other things, that was my job.
Yeah, we were exactly the same. I mean, I stopped. The other 3 continued being dentists, and then they funded the whole first 3 years of Enlighten.
Well, that's what happened with Parlour, right? As in, like, all of us have been working as dentists as well as funding the business of that as well. And I think it's really, really, really challenging. Because you also read stories about how people completely quit their job, Uber, Airbnb, whatever, and then kind of live on a sofa on baked beans and are like, this is it, this is how it's got to work. I want to rewind a little bit though. So let's talk about the business. How was the idea born? And let's talk about how that whole started and the name.
The name's an interesting one. The name is probably less exciting than everyone thinks. Everyone's like, the name. But I'll tell you the real story about the name. The business started because it was a confluence of forces, but where kind of matcha comes into our lives is that Marissa, my wife, has ADHD and anxiety. So she's neurodiverse, and she was drinking a lot of coffee, working in finance at university, in the library late at night, drinking a lot of coffee, a lot of Red Bull, and eventually it was just breaking her body down. She has jitters, anxiety, crashes. I mean, when you drink Red Bull or coffee, how do you feel?
I feel pretty bad. I've actually I stick to matcha and mushroom coffee, to be honest. And again, it's just because of that slow release. I don't enjoy it. I feel actually really anxious when I cannot drink espresso. I can't even drink a strong coffee or an Americano, to be honest.
Well, I used to drink a lot of coffee and actually I didn't have any issues with it. But Marissa got onto matcha because a friend introduced it to her. And then she was hooked. It changed her life. And as a result, I think she pushed it onto myself and Teddy, and we got very into it. And when we all moved back to the UK, there was no matcha. I mean, Pret had matcha, but it was not very good. And no other high street cafe chain had matcha. And the small independents that did were using really low quality matcha because there wasn't a lot of education around matcha. And it's a premium product, so you can put it on a menu for like £5, £6. But the products themselves were really, really bad. So we had no matcha. We were working long hours. We needed caffeine. So we just started buying our own matcha from Japan. And that started as like, okay, let's buy a sample here, a sample there, to actually importing like kilo bags of matcha for ourselves. And then we probably ordered too much at some point and said, you know, if we're getting this really good matcha and there's a gap in the market, because typically we feel like the UK is a couple years behind the US and matcha is massive in the US, why don't we try and sell this to cafes? Which we did. And that kind of leads us to here. And now we're the largest matcha brand in Europe as a result of that. And it's just kind of been a crazy whirlwind ride, but it wasn't as clear cut as like, let's quit our jobs, let's start a matcha brand. It was, we use this authentically. People are going to use us, are going to need it. So let's fill that gap. And then the name, we had a branding agency, which basically putting the packaging together at the very beginning. We ended up actually, we fired all agencies ever. So we don't need agencies anymore. We do it all in-house. Marissa taught herself graphic design. But the one thing they did design is the logo. And we essentially were going into production and needed a name, and we didn't have a name. And the names they were giving us, we didn't like. So we always liked brands that had names, human names in them, because we thought you could relate to them. Whether it was Tony's Chocolonely, for example, the chocolate brand, or Nutty Bruce is like an alternative milk brand. There are so many out there. We always just felt like those brands resonated with us as human beings. So we looked through our names. Levi was taken by the denim brand. So that was out.
Ovs.
It's like Levi's. So that was done. Marissa, bless her, like the name just doesn't really roll off the tongue.
Yeah.
And then Ted is gender neutral. Everyone knows a Ted.
Isn't that teddy bear the Ted?
Yeah.
The famous teddy bear, the one with Mark
Ted,
Wahlberg.
Exactly. There's that Ted, but like you might have a dog called Ted. You know someone called Ted. Like
It's such a funny story.
like a weird.
You could have picked any name, right?
Yeah, but everyone knows a Ted, right? So, and then we were like, okay, Ted. I mean, we were like, let's put something before Ted. It could have been like Reunite Ted or Handcraft Ted. And we always say perfect. Like if you would say to me, like, how's the dress? It's perfect.
Yeah, me too.
So I just say perfect Ted, and that was it. And we just went with it. And I think the lesson learned is that, and you guys probably see this in your businesses, the name is probably the most relevant thing.
Yeah.
It's what you build around it and how you position it.
Agree. I mean, if McDonald's was called Starbucks, then we'd all be talking about Starbucks burgers, you know. Like,
Exactly. What does McDonald's really mean?
Nothing.
What does Starbucks really mean?
I would have to disagree with that, actually, because I think that sometimes brands that have a person behind it become more personable to the people.
Yeah.
So if you think about even like, I don't know if you've ever listened to a podcast with Jo Malone, but Jo Malone said one of her biggest regrets in the world was actually calling the brand her name, because now that she no longer owns the brand, people still massively affiliate it with her, and it no longer really reflects who she is and what she does. And I think that is interesting, but people resonate with Jo Malone because you think of a woman that really knows and she's really homely. So I definitely think, and I think that is more personable than the White Company, for example, you know, which, you know, arguably does a similar sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I think there is something about a name, and as you said, a personal name that helps people resonate, especially those that buy into people.
For sure.
Yeah,
Agreed.
which is what they were going for. But
Yeah.
but you know, the people do.
McDonald's was a guy. He was a guy. Kentucky Fried Chicken, he was a guy, wasn't he?
Colonel Sanders.
Yeah, exactly.
But what I'm just saying is that the brand itself is much less important than what the brand stands for. you
Yeah,
know?
totally.
Like,
Yes, totally.
why is Perfect Ted a matcha or an energy brand? There's nothing that says.
Yeah.
And we actually had, we've at the beginning, you fight with that. You're like, okay, hang on, should we change the name?
Yeah.
And we almost did, I think, a couple times, but there's bigger issues in a business than a name.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So you had unbelievable success from the beginning. How did you manage that? You know, as two people that have also had startups themselves, it's so rare to have that astronomical growth from the beginning. How did that happen? Do you want to talk to us a little bit about that? And, you know, any advice that you might want to give people that do want to start something?
Yeah, I think the advice is always just start.
Yeah.
But we did have unbelievable success, but there's also the stuff behind that people don't see. There's walking around Camden or Shoreditch.
This is when you first started. So I'm talking about embryonic stages. The product's
right
there.
at the beginning.
Then what happened?
Well, right at the beginning, like when we had this matcha, like we were walking around cafes trying to sell it, and you have two just like guys walking around with backpacks with cocaine bags full of matcha trying to sell it to cafes, and them telling you to fuck off and get out. And we look like idiots with literally egg on our face. And that is a really dark place, because Teddy's looking to quit his job. He's just turned down his spot at Harvard Law School. I'm working another job. So we're just like, what are we doing? And then I think the advice is get really good at being rejected. I was in sales, so like I was pretty used to rejection, but get really good at being rejected, because at the beginning it's just pushing a ball up a hill, and people don't see all the stuff at the beginning. Same with your businesses. I'm sure there were late nights and times when you were like, fuck this. And now in reflection, everyone just sees the success. It's like that quote about Lionel Messi. It's like it took him 20 something years to become an overnight success. There's so much in the background that people don't see, all the hard work, all the graft. So
one of my favorite quotes is, I don't know if you've seen it, because someone says, I can't believe I went to the doctor or the dentist or spoke to a lawyer for 15-20 minutes and they charge that much. And it says, you're not paying me for the years, you're not paying for the time, you're paying me for the years. And I really like that. I was like, because people fail to recognize that to become an expert in your profession, you know, to be a master of your trade takes years, and you're paying for the years, not necessarily the time.
I like that.
And I really like that
Have
too.
you seen that, the guy from NVIDIA?
No.
Jensen, they ask him, what would you have, if you could go back and start again, what would you have done differently? And he said, I wouldn't have started NVIDIA.
Really?
And it's like the biggest company in the whole world.
Why did he say that?
The pain, if you knew the pain and hassle and shame and nightmares he would have had to go through, he would have never done it.
People ask us all the time, if you sell the business and start something else, what would it be? And the number one answer is always not a food and beverage brand. Because it is so difficult. It's so saturated, it's so competitive. And we have no experience in it. So there are so many issues you have to learn. There's so much learning.
What was the first moment where you thought there's an inflection, like from total struggle to we might have something here? What was a moment that comes to mind?
So we launched in our drinks in October of 2021. So just under 3 years ago. And there was so much struggle to get to the point where we had the drinks physically, and we were launching at London Coffee Festival in Shoreditch. And we had the set, because we had no money to build a set, was just the cans. We just built IKEA CD shelves and put the cans in them and it looked good. So we're like, that's the set. And it was that first trade show when people started coming and being like, oh, like matcha, like I've heard about matcha. Matcha's interesting. And then I remember one distributor who we now work with still came up to us and gave us their business card, and they said, please get in touch. We think what you're doing on the healthy energy side has legs. That was just like the most real moment for us, because somebody besides us and our parents, who were like thinking we were really special, believed in us. And then off the back of that, we launched into Rhona Barrett very, very quickly.
Through him?
Not through the distributor. They saw us on social media. So we're putting out social media posts, really exposing ourselves, making ourselves...
From the beginning,
making ourselves like really look stupid and just putting ourselves out there while all of our other friends are working corporate jobs and probably not embarrassed about their lives in the public. We're putting ourselves out there, which is a really difficult thing to do. It's really exposing. And then Rhona and Barrett found us through our social media. And now Rhona and Barrett, these products just launched into Rhona and Barrett. They're one of our biggest partners and they're amazing for us. So those 2 points were really an inflection. But I guess if you reflect on your business, I'm sure it's the same with you two. You just never know where the winner's going to come from. You just never know who the person you speak to is going to introduce you to somebody. So it's like you got to increase the surface area of your life by just doing as much as you possibly can and being at as many places as you possibly can, but also just like taking the risk and taking the punt.
I think, there's people also really underestimate exposure. And I think one thing that many people fail on, or the reason why they don't start, is because they're so afraid of what other people think. And I think you have to be prepared to have people laugh at you, to do things imperfectly and to fail and not care about that. And social media is a massive step for a lot of people, particularly professional people, because we're designed to kind of be like, you're white collar, you're this, you're proper, and you don't want to be seen as somebody that's like an influencer in a way. But it's that exposure, because as you said, you don't know who's watching you. You don't know how many people can resonate with what you're doing, or they might be like, oh, I actually see what this person is about. And I think that's really, really important.
But you built a social following. So think about you at the beginning,
and
like us now, because we have nowhere near as many followers as you, as an example. But it's not even like you're putting out content and there's hundreds of thousands of people who are loving it and are inspired by it. We put out stuff every day, even from the beginning, and you don't know who's going to interact with it. You don't know if it's going to do anything for your business. And you get your friends, people who you think really are your closest friends, making like kind of snide remarks at you, saying like lol at your LinkedIn, or lol, like thanks for the inspiration.
I hate
that. That's really hard to hear, when people take the piss out of you because you're putting yourself out there for something bigger. And that sucks.
But I think that just narrows, it shows you, for the people that first of all are too afraid to do what you're doing, and it shows who really do want to see you win. I think that's really important. We had another guest on here last year, a guy that's an influencer, really successful influencer, Henry. And he was saying exactly the same thing, because when he started producing like fashion and fitness content as a guy, he was getting, the piss ripped out of him. People were like, what the hell are you doing? Like, you're walking around topless. But and now he has a massive following. He does really well. He gets huge brand collaborations. And I really think that those people that waste time making fun of what you're doing is because they just can't do it themselves, We had
a really interesting, so Stephen Bartlett was in our office about a year ago, maybe like 11 months ago. And we just had our youngest team member join, a guy called Max, who I don't think he had a LinkedIn at the time. And he was 18, really smart, just left school, wanted to go into business rather than go to university, even though he, I think, got 3 A stars in his A level. He's a really, really smart guy. So we took him on, and he was crazy enough to join us. And Stephen was in the office, and we introduced him to Max. And Stephen is obviously an inspiring entrepreneur. And Max said, "Can I ask you a question?" Stephen said, "Yes." Max said, "I want to build my personal brand like you have and build a social following, but I don't have LinkedIn. I have a few hundred followers on Instagram. What would be your number one piece of advice for someone who wants to put themselves out there, but is too nervous to do so because they're scared they're going to get judged by their friends and their family?" And Stephen's advice was kind of what I just said, was just start. And so actually the impetus for what Max has built, which I'll come on to, is Stephen said to him, it's all about consistency firstly, and building the habit. If you post every working day for the next year, he shook his hand on it and I was on camera and everything, I'll fly you to LA with Stephen for 2 weeks to do podcast stuff and just to hang out with him and his team. And Max, who's like an 18-year-old impressionable guy, is like, oh my God, that's unbelievable. Max hasn't missed a post any weekday in the last 10, 11 months. He's coming up to 12 months, so Stephen better book his flights, whatever. Yeah. But Max has built a social following that's huge on LinkedIn, and now people who are interested in the brand often find it through Max. And it's the power of social that really can have on your business, but it's all about starting and letting go of the inhibitions of the people that are judging you.
LinkedIn is a really interesting one. I just started posting actually last week. Randomly, I was like, I feel like I should just do LinkedIn. And I'm really good with consistency, because I've always believed that consistency takes you to places that motivation can't. And that most important thing is just showing up. Atomic Habits is one of my most favorite books. Yeah, exactly. Because sometimes I will go to the gym for like 20 minutes and do a half-assed workout, but the most important thing is that I turned up, right? Because it's the habits that build what you want. So it's really funny because I'm trying to tailor like my LinkedIn posts in comparison to my Instagram. Have you noticed? I started doing stuff and like I'm making much more like businessy and like entrepreneurial, and I'm really enjoying it actually, because sometimes with Instagram I feel that pressure to like look a certain way, be under the kind of like glamour stuff going on. Sometimes a post flops and you're like, oh, this, but actually LinkedIn I don't care as much. So I think it's a really interesting platform. Now, you've mentioned Stephen a few times, and I think one of the most important things we want to discuss today is your Dragon's Den journey. I've done Dragon's Den as well, as you know, and I want to hear about how you got onto the show, what your experience was, planning, etc., and what happened.
Sure. I wasn't on the show.
Okay.
I was the lucky one who didn't go on to. During COVID, I think there was a maximum of 2 people could go on at any one time.
Yeah, that was what happened with us.
So I was obviously, I actually was in Ibiza for work.
Sure.
I actually was. The proof is that I was speaking at an event and my Apple Watch was going crazy because I knew they were on the show and I couldn't answer the phone. So I had to call them afterwards, but they were calling me with the BBC producers filming the FaceTime. So I missed my minute of glory, but it's okay. So Teddy and Marissa went on the show. We spoke to them.
So did they get headhunted? Because researchers contacted us and said, "Do you guys want to come on it?"
They got headhunted by the BBC, and then
Same.
went through like the basic diligence stuff of sending us your numbers, your story, etc. This was in year 1. We were too early. They said, "You're still a bit early. Come back next year." And by the way, Marissa's American, so they have Shark Tank, but as a Brit, Dragon's Den is like iconic. You know, it was what we watched with our family.
Yeah.
And like Levi Roots reggae sauce is like just like part of my childhood, you know? So we kept building the business. A year later, we said, let's get back in touch with them. We emailed the producer. He said, great, like send me some stuff. We did the whole thing again. And then they went silent. And then it must have been in June of 2022. We get an email that says, hey guys, a slot's open. Think you'd be great for the show. Can you come in? I'm like, oh my God, we're going to go on Dragon's Den. This is amazing. And the next question was obviously when is the airing or when is the filming? It was I think it was a Friday, and they said it's on Thursday. So we had essentially 5-6 days to prepare.
My goodness.
And I was going for the work trip. And at this point we had no grasp of our numbers or the business plan or anything. It was just like 3 of us going at it. We had 1 employee or 2 employees. We had no idea what we were doing. We were just trying to grow. And we basically sat in a boardroom for 3 days and kind of worked out our numbers. I was calling my friends who were working at KPMG as accountants, being like, what's the profit if this is our revenue and this is our kind of, what's our margin?
It went down as one of the best pitches ever, though.
It did, but I think that's like, I think it was because, firstly, Marissa and Teddy were very polished. Marissa, especially because she's American, just sounds better. Yeah. But I think it was, we prepared as much as we physically could in 3 to 4 days, and we just knew everything inside out, no stone unturned. They really, really practiced, but they were in there for an hour and a half, I think, hour and 45 minutes, and they show 14 minutes on TV. They just crushed it. They did so well. I think it was their energy more than their answers. They just brought in energy.
They got 5 offers.
Yeah. And they took money on the show from Stephen and Peter. And then ultimately probably same with you guys, then there's like way more stuff. And we ended up just doing a deal with Stephen Bartlett.
So it's interesting hearing all this back because I've got so many memories. So we were actually featured on Plastic Free July, firstly on ITV this morning. My friend Sarah Jossel had featured Parlour. Then we got a message from the researchers. Then we had to do a rehearsal on camera recorded.
Really?
First of all, yeah. And then they were like, okay, you're through from round 1. Then they said to us, only 2 of you can go on the show. And it was decided that it was going to be me and Simon, who you met. And we'd practiced our pitch like a million times and it was super polished, and we decided who was going to talk about what. Yeah. My sister even designed this incredible set. She's an architect and a set designer. So we could hear the dragons like going, what is this? Because it was just this unbelievable set. We were also separated because of COVID. I'm sure it was the same with your brother and Marissa because we couldn't be in the same room. So our dressing rooms were like separate. Can you imagine? And then they made us wait around for 3 hours. Then after that, we went in and we were grilled for about 2 hours inside the boardroom. Do you want to call it a boardroom? I feel like I'm talking about The Apprentice, but anyways, I'm going to call it the den. Okay. Yeah. And we actually had 2 offers, and it was interesting because I don't think it was necessarily the pitch, but I think it was that they found toothpaste tablets in particular to be so niche. Yeah. And it seemed to suit Deborah because she's super vegan, and also Tej, who was also at the time, because he was one of the dragons, you know, had this
vitamins.
Exactly. So it was really, really interesting, and we turned down the offer. But
that's legendary.
Be honest, do you regret that?
Have you seen the bit? Like, it went really viral on TikTok. Someone randomly reposted this on TikTok, like found it, where I was like at the back of the wall. I was going to Simon, better just go in with a lower offer. And then he was like, Rose, it's too much. Have you not? So you remember that bit at the wall, right? And so anyways, it went viral on TikTok recently, again, after like 4 or 5 years, whenever we did it. And
so you do regret it?
I really wanted to take an offer, to be honest with you. I really, 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 really wanted to take an offer. And I think also all the buzz, as you know, around the show, when we had aired, because it took a year to air or whatever it was, 9 months, the sales that were created were even more than the investment that we had actually asked. It's astronomical marketing. You know, you have no idea the power of that show.
It's like 4 million people.
Yeah. Crazy. And I think, you know, it was one of our best financial months. But also on top of that, the amount of investors that came forward as well and the interest around that time was unbelievable. And I think that it gives you a false sense of security in a way, because you're like, oh, everyone wants us. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but did you go into it sort of more soberly than, I guess, in a way, you guys thought that the deal wasn't good enough, right? Whereas
it wasn't, though. I mean, they wanted...
It's never good enough. But maybe they went into it thinking, okay, we're going to give away a big chunk of our company for less money than it's worth.
I don't know what your
we're going to get the marketing out of it.
I don't know what your business was at the time, but we were doing, I think the month we went into film, we were doing like, it may have been £10,000 that month. So
it's very early.
It was early. So we went in and we
were similar. I think we were also at the very baby stages, or we were doing maybe a little bit more, but
we went in for the TV. We said to ourselves, we own 100% of the business. We're very early on. Let's go with a valuation that is
realistic,
reasonable, and we'll get offers. Because if you get, and the number one thing they push back on is valuation. So if you go in like a £3 million valuation, it's like you're just isolating yourself.
Exactly.
So you can always not do the deal afterwards. So we went in, £1 million valuation, did a deal at 500,000, and I mean, it was kind of irrelevant how much the business we gave away, because it was a percentage of nothing essentially at that point. And we ended up not taking the money from Peter because they didn't want to dilute 10%. And in between the time that you filmed and the negotiation, we actually only signed with Stephen the day it aired. It aired on March 2nd, I think. And we signed on March 1st with Stephen or something. So it took 9 months of negotiating.
So what was his percentage?
He took 5% of the business, and it was for £25,000. And that 5%, the second 5% for Peter, in that negotiation period, Tesco approached us, Waitrose approached us.
Yeah,
so the whole thing about Peter, which was distribution and scale, we felt like we could achieve on our own through the relationships we'd built with the supermarkets. Whereas Stephen's whole thing was brand, and it is brand, and he's amazing at it. And that's been a great part, but the relationship for our business.
So would you say one of the best decisions that you made was taking Stephen solely as a dragon, because you recognized early on that it was about the brand versus the scale?
100%.
Yeah.
So how much does Stephen contribute? I mean, can you call him anytime you want? Do you meet with him once a month? What's the story?
So it's less formal than monthly meetings, although I think we probably should have monthly meetings. I think it's just we're all over the place. He's traveling, we're traveling, we're working, he's working. It's very much as though I think we're friends. So we WhatsApp, I'd say, every day, every other day. We're in a WhatsApp group, and it's just nonstop. It's just ideas throwing around. Stephen isn't the investor, or we don't need an investor in Stephen to be digging into our financials, and really he's not the one that is driving like pure financial decisions. He's a marketing genius, he's a brand genius, and he really supports us on that. So for example, we did the brand collaboration with the guy called the Hardest Geezer, who's the guy who ran the length of Africa. I don't know if you saw him. He was big on TV. We sponsored him and his run across Africa. Stephen brought that to us. So Stephen really opens a lot of doors for us on the brand side.
Connections.
He's very involved, and he has really, really good marketing ideas. And he's a massive supporter of the brand. He uses it authentically. We're now the sponsor to Diary of a CEO. So it's, in his cup on the podcast, it's what he drinks. Him and his girlfriend use it. His team love it. And so it just is a really authentic partnership. I think maybe with you guys on the show, I don't know how authentic it would have been, for example. I mean, actually, Tej and Deborah both have kind of like vitamins and sustainability angles, but I think authenticity in a partner is massive.
So ultimately what they wanted, like you said, my business partners are very sassy and au fait, especially with the financials.
Okay.
So they went like really knowing the numbers and really realistic, and asked for £70,000 for 9%.
Okay.
And they basically said that they would give £70,000 for 30%. That's a lot, I mean, that made them the majority versus us, because there was already three of us.
30%, was it?
Correct, yeah. So it became almost impossible to negotiate down, because even if we wanted to negotiate down to like 15, that was almost by half. Deborah loved it. She really loved it. And I think she would have been an incredible partner. And obviously Tuka when we left the den was like, you dodged a bullet with that. That's when we went off the camera, like they showed in the episode. And then Deborah turns around. There was a really iconic moment. And Deborah turns around and goes, no, we didn't. You know, I haven't got what those two have got, as in with me and Simon. She was like, you know, they're young, they're this, they're this. So we obviously had impressed them with our professionalism, with the way that we had done the pitch, etc. But it's such a new idea. And although matcha is niche, it was, toothpaste tablets were like super, super niche. And it still requires people to consider changing a habit of a lifetime. So it was quite a difficult thing. But as I said, you know, we rode this huge wave with the brand off Dragon's Den. I think I always say to young entrepreneurs that have got a good brand, I'm like, if you can get on the show, do it.
100%.
100%.
I met with a brand. We get calls, I think, we get LinkedIn DMs from brands who are going on the show, or Stephen has just invested in on the show, asking us every question you can consider, because I think quite publicly, Stephen has backed us as a business quite heavily, and we've aligned ourselves very closely with Stephen. So we're kind of like the Stephen Bartlett brand from Dragon's Den, which is something we're trying to grow out of, because I think we're bigger than that now in some sense, or we want to graduate from that in some sense, even though it's amazing marketing for us. But we get calls from all the Dragon's Den investments who say, what's it like to work with Stephen? I'm negotiating this. Do you have any advice? So we're very interwoven with Stephen's team and his life and everything.
Let's talk a little about the growth, right? Because you said you're not afraid to shy away, you know, from the financials, etc. So has there been a steady growth? Have you had dips? What's happened in terms of the growth period?
Yeah. So there hasn't been a dip, thank God, touch wood. That's wood.
Yeah.
It's just been, it was like this. Then Dragon's Den, we did, I think, £400,000 that month.
Wow.
The month that Dragon's Den aired, so
That's
March
crazy.
2023, so about 18 months ago. Last month we just did 1.3 million.
Wow.
So the business has kind of just really scaled super quickly. And I think we've done an amazing job with the sales team. We've done an amazing job of getting distribution and building out the platform. But really we've had a lot of support from the retailers. Tesco's really backed us, Holland and Barrett, Waitrose, and other supermarkets have really backed us and given us the opportunity when we've just been an unknown brand. So it's a combination of leveraging all the Dragon's Den hype and the Stephen piece, and then institutionalizing it by building a team and putting it into physical retail. But for example, there are areas of our business that are still small and still could scale, such as our e-commerce. I don't know what you guys are like on e-commerce, but we're still fairly new to the game.
So when you're talking about just DTC and all that kind of thing,
Amazon and the website.
Yeah, I think it's challenging. I mean, we're definitely in a different period of time at the moment anyways. You know, I think there has been a recession. I think that people are buying differently, more conscientiously. These are premium products, you know, that we're selling.
If I was going to buy this, I would buy it off Amazon, though.
Why?
Ease.
That's where I would buy stuff like this.
So it's interesting. Amazon is now, I haven't got a stat to back this up, but Amazon is where people go, at least I go, to search for goods, right? So if I need like a clothes rack or I need washing tablets, I don't go on Google and type in washing tablets, I go on Amazon.
Maybe I'd have to persuade my wife to buy it from Ocado, and she wouldn't buy enough of it or the right amount of it. I would just take it upon myself, and I don't know how to use
Amazon's
it.
just
I would go
easy.
straight to Amazon.
Yeah.
It is easy.
For something like this. I actually used to buy something like, not like this, but like a healthy fizzy drink from Amazon. They went under, I think.
The powders do much
finished that?
better. It's good.
Tasty.
I should have
Really
bought more.
tasty,
Sorry. I'll
man.
send you some more.
And I
But
was about to say, give me some.
Explain this to me. Regarding brand, and you said you're the biggest in Europe, so I take it there's a bigger one in the US.
I don't know. I mean, the US is just a much bigger market, so...
Yeah, so the question of, you know, like, you have to worry about it. I guess you guys have to worry about it too, right, with yours. If it works out, and it's working out, pretty soon there'll be a copycat.
There are copycats already, yeah.
Yeah, and some of those copycats will have much bigger distribution than you guys already have. I mean, maybe it might not be a Coca-Cola, right? They're a bit slow. But some of the food and beverage brand that's already in all the... is that what keeps you up at night? I mean,
We have enough distribution. It does, but we have enough distribution now where I think...
it's its own thing.
It's its own thing, and we can't just be switched in and switched out. I think...
A bit like, you know, the coconut water brand.
Yeah, there's so many.
I don't buy the copycats, man. I buy the original.
Yeah.
Which one, Innocent or Vita?
Vita Coco.
Vita.
Yeah.
No, I way prefer Innocent.
Innocent's
Vita
a
tastes
copycat.
weird.
It's a copycat, man.
No, it tastes better.
I know, but I just
Tastes
don't
better.
like copycats.
Tastes better. Okay.
Buy the original.
Yeah.
We from a business perspective, and I'm sure it's the same with you guys, we built it up so that we we have three sides to the business, by the way. We have the cans, we have these powders that are in retail, and then we also supply cafes, hotels, restaurants. So anyone from Joe and the Juice, we've got a big partnership with around the world, to Black Sheep Coffee as an example, to Soho Coffee, to like, all these chains. And
these guys had existing matcha suppliers.
A lot
of them didn't. Matcha's quite quite new.
A lot of them didn't,
Really?
but like we've really,
Joe and the Juice, they didn't.
But it's massive for these businesses because actually they're tapping into something that there's a massive demand for, and we're helping.
People want it.
But it's also really hard to get in good quality at good price, and because we're doing this, and this, we have the scale to bring down the cost of matcha. If you were to go into a supermarket and buy matcha 3 years ago, you could probably buy good matcha.
£18 I was paying for a little pot.
Yeah, maybe more than that even. Like if you got a Planet Organic or Selfridges.
Yeah, Whole Foods I paid.
Yeah, 30 quid, 25
quid.
quid, 40 quid. Yeah. So that is £10.50 in Tesco, that first pouch. The other one's about £14 in Holland & Barrett. It's really accessible. It's inexpensive. That's because we've managed to keep the price down because of scale. And that's why we're trying to make matcha more accessible for everyone, as opposed to going in at a really premium price point. So we're the best product in the market at the lowest price.
Are you guys paying yourself a salary, dividends? How's it working?
Yeah, so we've just started paying ourselves a salary. We, not dividend, but we loaned money to the business at the very beginning. So
Directors' loans,
paying the loans back, and then taking a very small salary. Yeah.
Okay.
And if I want to copy this, it's a bit unfair question to ask you.
No, you can.
But made in Holland, right?
It's made in the UK, but we distribute in the Netherlands as well.
Oh, I see.
In theory, yeah, you could reverse engineer that, but that's why the most important thing
quite easily, right?
is brand.
Yeah,
Not that easily, because matcha itself is a really hard product to put in a can. We found that because we had a bunch of production issues. But yeah, it's water, matcha, fruit juice. It's sparkling water with fruit juice and matcha. So really someone like Coke with a massive marketing or NPD budget could reverse engineer that, in the same way that I could reverse engineer that smoothie you're drinking, or Coke, right? Because it's all out there. Yeah. It's just a matter of brand at that point.
I think also as well, there is something
same with your business.
Same to do with like authenticity. You know, when we talk about Parlour as well, one of the big questions is, well, isn't Colgate going to copy you? And I said, yeah, but it's like McDonald's saying they're doing a healthy salad.
Yeah.
You know, these big conglomerates have been doing it for so long and doing it wrong for so long. You're not going to really believe the authenticity when they come out with something. And Colgate did try a toothpaste tablet and it flopped.
Yeah.
You know, so it's the same with, was it Dollar Shave Club?
Yeah.
Dollar Shave Club, you think about them as well. Then Gillette tried to do their own sort of version. It didn't do very well.
Yeah.
So I think you can always say, yeah, these people will do it, but it doesn't matter. Interestingly, I was walking past, you know, Chelsea Dental Clinics on the Fulham Road. You know where the Marks and Spencer's is? So I was walking to Marks and Spencer's. I need to go pick up something, and I looked across the road, and there's a new dental practice, and they've called themselves Dental Clinic Chelsea, and I was like, that is hilarious. It's a new one. Yeah, it's a new one. And I said to my husband, and he was like, well, when people are copying you, you know you're doing something right. Like, that's the way you've got to see it. So
100%. It's the highest form of compliment, isn't it?
Yeah.
How many people are you?
We are 19 people, which feels like a million people to us, because it was 18 months ago, maybe 19 months ago, that we were three of us around an office. Our office was the size of this table. And we've now outgrown our current office and moving office in probably 6 months or so. And it just keeps growing. And the problems change from, worrying about product or cash or distribution to team problems. I'm dealing with the livelihoods of like 19 individuals, which is scary.
We know the same.
And what about on the sort of fulfillment and all of that? Is that all outsourced? Warehouse?
Yeah. So we outsource all the warehousing, and we use a 3PL, so a third-party logistics group in the UK and the Netherlands. We try and be smart and outsource where we can, but we like to keep everything in-house in terms of design, brand, agency, videography, photography, marketing, etc. Because every time we've used an agency, they just don't get it like we get it.
And you said you had cameras from the beginning.
Yeah.
That's what they call it. Build in public or something.
Yeah, we're like building in public.
Yeah,
exactly. So
why did you do that? Did you know to do that?
Because we didn't have a marketing budget to spend hundreds of thousands of pounds on Amazon or Google ads or Meta ads. So we were like, let's just film everything, and our marketing channel or our marketing positioning can be like founder-led, team-led. Instead of doing UGC, which is user-generated content, we did EGC, which is employee-generated content, and that's just been our marketing positioning. And I think what that's evolved to is we're no longer like a product. We never were, or we aren't a product-led brand. These are the products, but actually we're
purpose-led.
Or we're led by the brand versus the product. So people who look at our social media feed don't see the products really. They see people, lifestyle, faces, because ultimately we're trying to evoke a feeling in people when they're using our products, not just like stick a product in. So that's why when I go on a social media account of another food and beverage brand, it's 99% of the time just like someone holding a can on the beach, someone drinking matcha like in their kitchen, whereas we're all about how it makes you feel, not about the product itself.
Do you do influencer marketing? Do you believe in influencer marketing?
We've done hardly any to date. The nice thing about matcha is that influencers like matcha, and so we do a lot of gifting, but we don't do any paid influencer marketing. It is something we're starting to look at.
Fine. So we've all had a very nice story so far, and I'm going to dig a little bit deeper.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Have you had any really low moments during this journey, or your life in general, where you felt like your mental health had been suffering, or anyone perhaps in your company, and how you dealt with that?
Yeah, so I'll start with the personal. It is very hard to work with your brother. I mean, you said you worked with your brother, right?
Well, no.
With your wife,
I'm breaking
sorry.
the rules as well. Yeah, wife and best friend.
Wife and best friend. Right, so like I don't know if you work with siblings or your husband.
No, I actually don't, but go ahead.
You're lucky. So I work with my wife and my brother, and up until about 2 months ago, we all lived together. And so the number one argument that would come in our respective relationships would be because of work. So Teddy would have a perspective on something, Marissa would have a perspective on something, and they'd be very different because they're very different people and they have very different views. And I'd be stuck in the middle and I have to basically pick. So if I pick Marissa and her perspective, then Teddy's like, we're not going to the gym in the morning. We're not, fuck you, we're not talking. And he'll be pissy with me. If I pick Teddy, I have to get into bed with Marissa that evening, and she just like, good night.
Yeah.
There's
classic girl.
classic. It's very difficult to be the one in between two people and they're both very stubborn and strong characters. And so I'm always have been caught in the middle, and it's been really tense moments. A lot of them caught on camera, where the business was not going through trouble, but there are very complex moments in a business where you have to make decisions that are almost life and death for the business. And if you have two very contrasting views and I'm caught in the middle, it's very, very difficult. And so it's affected our relationships really negatively as individuals. And it also has changed how we are. I think Teddy's probably less close with Marissa as a friend than he was 3-4 years ago now, because it's very, very professional. And they have to think about how they communicate with each other, because ultimately they're co-workers first and probably family second. We spend so much time in the office that we have to be professional with each other, even when we want to tell each other to fuck off, or want to give them a hug, or I want to tell Teddy I love him, whatever. Any of these things, you can't really do it in the office because you've got to be professional. So I think that's been a really difficult thing, is creating separation, creating boundaries between work, life, and all of it.
I think, as I reflect on that, I think one of the most difficult things, and you hear it all the time from entrepreneurs, is the aspect of like going into business with friends. So I can't even imagine what it is for family. And I think you're right, because the dynamics that you have within a friendship are completely different to when you get into business with somebody. And I think that's really challenging. I'd say it's worth
it. I'd say it's worth it in the end, yeah, because
I think with friendships it's more difficult.
I see Sanj every day now.
Yeah,
it's nice,
and it's a wonderful thing.
But you and Sanj work, and you understand how you guys work.
But all our conversations are work conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah,
work isn't left in the office, is it? Like we'll be at dinner with my family, sorry. Yeah.
But I've got another important question, and it's something I regret in a way, is that when we set this company up, there was at the time when we set it up, Google and everything were just sort of starting, and that touchy-feely way of working that everyone thought was a ping pong table and all of that.
Did you do all of that?
We've got bean bags, the whole thing. But forget that's superficial crap, right? But I had this feeling, that as a company, the feeling would be the same as a family, and we did that, but I think it was an error, And when you talk to real proper business people, they talk about pro sports team.
Yeah, that's how we think.
Much better way of looking at it.
Like why? Explain what's this pro sports team?
Because pro sports team is the best person in the job doing the right job for the best. For the company,
someone's not
for the
good
of the company.
They're off. They're out.
Yeah.
Do you know?
And when it's a family,
that's how. But we're moving towards that. Like, to be honest, it's quite a sad thing. we have treated our employees and our team like family, and only gets you so far, because then the boundaries are blurred, and they'll make a comment, or you'll make a comment, and you'll see them outside of work or whatever it is, and it just becomes awkward. The truth
it's a lovely thing. It's a wonderful thing.
It's nice to a point, but
to a point.
If we're really trying to scale, if we're trying to go from 1.5 million to 3 million a month next year, you've got to be ruthless and brutal and cutthroat. And for someone like me who is
sweet,
well, I don't know if I'm sweet, but I'm like, I have like an...
Don't demasculise him.
I have an emotional conscience, right? And it's very difficult for me to tell people they're not good enough, or to get rid of people, or to move people out of the business. It's very, very difficult.
So has that played on your mental health as well? You know, because you've had to take on that role of having to like fire people or to break bad news. Do you think that's had an effect on you?
Yeah, giving feedback is the hardest thing in the world, because I have to turn around to somebody and say, what you did, or how you've been, or your performance over the last X weeks, months, whatever, is bad. It's not good enough. Obviously, you communicate it in a way that makes them feel better. But giving really harsh feedback is super important. You've got to be transparent. You've got to act like a sports team, because ultimately I don't owe it to the team. I owe it to the larger company. So no individual is bigger than the team, is what I'm trying to say. So if someone's not good enough and it's affecting the company's growth, the company's trajectory, that's not good enough. You've got to put the company first. So for example, and the truth is, I say this to our team the whole time, if I'm not a good enough managing director, or if Marissa's not a good enough marketeer or head of brand, if Teddy's not a good enough ops and salesperson, we'll hire above them, because my life is invested in this business. All my life savings are invested in this business. I'm not putting that at risk because of, I don't want to upset someone.
But it happens, you know, when it comes to appraisals, someone says something like, my partner's lost his job, my mortgage has doubled, and the reasons for a pay rise come down to family reasons. I need more money. I need more money. Yeah. In a family situation, you really empathize with that person. You think, well, this person's been here for 12 years.
Yeah.
They need more money. You know, I've got to be loyal back to, they've been loyal to me. I've got to be loyal back to them. When it's a pro sports team, well, it's the best person in the job to do the right thing, and meritocracy when it comes to pay rises and so forth. And meritocracy in the end is what's correct for a company. But, you know, the funny thing is, I really wanted it to be a family.
Yeah.
I really did, you know, and it's tough. Your practice very much like a family.
Kind of, I was about to say. So like the thing is that I think people get really obsessed with the idea of culture within company, and I think it's like this super in vogue thing to be like, it is all about the culture, and like you said, like creating.
And it's important.
And culture is important, 100%. But like you said, you know, you have to recognize that dynamics have to be healthy, but not so that it interferes with the production of work. And that's a really hard balance.
That's the needle we're dancing on.
You know, but that's the dance that you're constantly playing. I think, you know, the dance that you're dancing. In my business, like I'm quite a lax boss in the sense that like I'm very chilled. I've just recently got diagnosed with ADHD, so now they understand like most like certain like ways of like thinking, and I'm not the, you know, archetypal like CEO that's going to be like super strict and everything like that. But I think I've always known I've had ADHD, even though I'd never been diagnosed. I think someone 5 years ago had said it to me, and then everyone around me is like, you've definitely got it.
Yeah.
And I think that I'd managed it subconsciously as a child. And as you know, like a lot of women are very good at concealing it, because I always knew from a young age that the way that I manage it is delegation. So like I am the biggest advocate for delegating where you can.
Like Marissa.
Yeah. So people are like, how do you manage like a team of 30 people, run a podcast, you know, do all your social media, everything? And I just, you know, I'm just really good at picking the right people for the job. You know, like now I have an amazing operations manager. She's expensive, but I was like, unless the building's going on fire, do not stress me out about anything, because I realized I was so incredibly stressed all the time. And now like my work-life balance is just amazing, and she basically runs the show, you know, essentially with me doing all the stuff that I'm good at, the branding and the marketing and everything like that.
That's the thing about hiring is, at the beginning, you just basically pick from the people who are crazy enough to join you and who you can afford, which is usually young people out of university.
Yeah.
And then as the business gets to a point where you can actually afford the best people, it's really difficult, because you look at your team and you say, this person's been with us, been, as you said, really loyal for the last 2-3 years, and they're brilliant at their job. But are they the person that's going to take us from here to 30, 40, 50 million in sales next year? And if they're not, then you've got to be cutthroat and you've got to make decisions. And that's where egos can
I
get...
find it one of the hardest parts of business, where you're telling someone that you're going to let them go, even though they've been fantastically loyal and put their life on the line.
Agree.
And I asked Ophir this, from Pearl AI, and he's had $2 billion companies, right? And I asked him, I said, have you ever had to do that? And he went, every single person I've ever fired is that person.
Yeah.
Because by the time I get to fire them, they would have been fired ages ago if it was for any other reason, And it's just like, I lost a bit of innocence there.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Have you got investors now, further investors?
So we've only raised money once beyond Dragon's Den, and that was from Stephen's fund. So Stephen Bartlett's got a fund called Flight Fund, and the investors behind it are mostly exited entrepreneurs. So Al Barrett, who's the founder of Grenade, the protein, James Watt, the founder of Brewdog, is an investor in Stephen's fund, and many other people. He invested £1 million into our business in March of this year. And otherwise we've been profitable since very, very early on. So we managed to build it through cash flow and through the savings we had. And we haven't had to dilute too much. And we own 90% of our business. And so
have you now got those professionals on each? You haven't hired those people yet?
Working on it. It's really hard to find. I want to find the best people in the world, but then it's difficult because you want to find people who are also happy to roll their sleeves up and not think that they're the best and that they have room to grow and they can also get stuck in. You don't want to hire someone who's above it. Like I've spoken to, for example, we've just hired a head of marketing. She's brilliant. She starts in 5 weeks. But I looked at a bunch of people before that, and they maybe had great backgrounds, like training from Mars or Danone or Estee Lauder, like amazing CVs. But actually, when you get to that point in your career where you've done like 10 years, you think you're above all the stuff that comes in a startup. I don't want that. We need people who like believe and want to be there and want to be the first people to take the bins out.
They need to be malleable as well, because I think also we've had people on the team that have had this incredible experience in these CVs, but they don't also recognise that as startups, you don't have the budgets that Estee Lauder do. You don't have the budgets that all these other companies do. So I think that's what can make it really challenging as well for people that come into startups, because they're not used to the budget aspect of things, which has also been quite an interesting thing to navigate. So what's the future for Perfect Head?
The future is we've just launched these products here in front of us in Rhona and Barrett. So this one flavor's off screen, but there's 7 new flavored matcha powders. All it is ceremonial grade matcha and natural flavorings, some coconut sugar and coconut milk to make it froth. It's very straightforward. You put it in milk, you shake it, and it's a matcha latte. So my favorite flavor is the mint, which is available online, but vanilla, for example, has been around for like 2 weeks. It's doing amazingly online. We've also are about to launch, they are available online and in Rhona and Barrett, Nespresso pods. So the whole concept is making matcha easy, matcha made easy.
Love it.
People don't like drinking matcha because it's either difficult to make at home, they find it expensive.
I bought Nespresso matcha pods 2-3 years ago. It just kept exploding in my machine.
I'll send you some that don't explode.
Yeah. I'm honestly, I have a lot of espressos because of the machine.
Yeah.
Because of how quickly,
That's the whole thing. People don't want to make matcha because they want to whisk it, but we brought the price down so it's accessible from a price, and now we're bringing down like the simplicity of how to produce it. I made a matcha in here before we started, and the whole concept is bringing matcha to the masses, make it more accessible, and then growing the business. I want to double the business in the next 12 months.
Amazing. Yeah. And have you thought about an exit yet?
It's a bit early, man.
On the dark days, yeah. In the depths of winter when you're like, fuck this, and you're really tired and it's 9 o'clock at night and you're in the office and you're dealing with some shit problem. You're like, can someone come up and just buy us? But I think that happens. I think we'll start getting approached if we keep growing at the same rate in the next 12 months. If anyone's listening and wants to buy us, DM me. Yeah.
Hey, should we discuss? No,
I think it's not. I mean, we play with this. The concept as founders, otherwise we should grow this business for the next 20, 30, 40 years as our baby, or whether we should grow it for 3-4 years and sell it. So I don't know. I think we're just riding the wave and see where it goes.
I love that so
And
much.
the concept of you get the caffeine high, but you don't get the caffeine why?
Yeah. So matcha has an amino acid in it called L-theanine, and L-theanine regulates the way in which caffeine enters your bloodstream. So with coffee, it just like I mean, I used to drink coffee. Like, you take up one sip and you're like buzzing.
Yeah.
Same with Red Bull. Matcha has L-theanine, so you drink it and it kind of regulates how it goes into your bloodstream. And instead of getting this, you get like a smoother caffeination, which means that you don't
Both
have
up and down.
yeah, which means you don't have the same crash, right?
Oh, because I see.
So it's changed a lot of people's lives, and the messages we get from people who have ADHD or anxiety, it really is having an impact on people's lives. And those messages that we get from mums who have given matcha to their teenage daughters who are starting at university but can't study because of their anxiety or their issues with coffee are super meaningful to us. So on those dark nights at 9 p.m. when you want to just go home and cry, and you get a DM on Instagram from a mum with that kind of story, it makes it all worthwhile.
I noticed that do you know AG1?
Yeah, 30
Yeah,
greens.
of course.
No, they're gigantic, right? AG1's now, on some of their ads, they're selling don't get the high and the drop. On other ads, they're going for anti-aging.
Yeah, defy age, I think it is.
On other ads, they're going for just what they are, like, which is a supplement thing. And so that sort of sideways move away from, and we saw it with Dirty. Yeah, I mean, they've got one coffee for skin, one for alertness, one for brain.
Listen, I've been saying this for a really long time and no one ever believes me, okay? So for the past, 6 years, I had also said exactly the same about Parlour. People are driven by different values onto why the business is the way that it is. You know, for example, Parlour, our primary focus was the environment, being plastic free and what that does. And also, we recognized as we developed the product that people were really interested into the anti-aging and health benefits. People really, they prefer, sadly, I think, human beings to invest in themselves first and foremost than the environment, for example.
100%.
And, when we talk about the naturally whitening element or the anti-aging element of the hydroxyapatite, especially for my platform, because I see that people buy into that, they really, really do invest in that. And there's been a huge movement as well within dentistry as a whole, where these biological dentists are coming on and making these huge claims about the connection of certain products, the mouth and the whole body as a whole. And some of it is true, but they're really monopolizing on it. So I think there is a huge interest. Human beings are interested in their bodies.
Can I ask you 2 questions if you have time?
Yeah.
Purple toothpaste, I get hit with ads the whole time. I use purple things in my hair when it was blonde. It works.
Look, it's a brilliant product.
Marketing.
It's a brilliant product because the moment you open it, it clicks well. The moment you put it on, you see something, but 30 seconds later, it's all gone.
So it's rubbish.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say for example, I don't think it causes harm. I think, that's the most important thing, but ultimately, will it make your teeth whiter? What people don't like hearing is
30 seconds.
What people don't like hearing is it is professional whitening products, done, enlighten, it's professional whitening products, the only thing that's going to get your teeth truly, truly white. Anything else will help. All that stuff helps remove stain, but it's not going to make any kind of huge difference.
On dentistry, by the way, so I had my teeth, I told you this when we had dinner, I had my teeth bonded, the top ones, and it changed my life. My teeth weren't even that bad before. Mac Bagiero, who I told you, who was on the show, was my orthodontist growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. Gave me braces. Teeth are perfect. I didn't like how they looked. They were just a bit small in my mouth. Super self-conscious about it. I got bonding. I mean, I'm smiling so much more. I'm way happier. It has a massive impact. So the work you guys do on smile is so important. And I honestly can't recommend folks.
Who was the dentist who did the bonding?
Oh.
Was it here?
It's on Fitzroy Street. I don't know.
Oh, what you said.
Yeah. Image Dental, it's called.
Don't know.
She's a very nice woman. I live around there, so I went in there and I gave her the business, and super nice.
Image Dental.
Image Dental. Check it out. Check out these guys first. But it makes such a difference to your mental state. Being able to smile and not be like.
You know what? I think we're really lucky because we are in a game where we recognise it has such an impact. And I did a post about this on LinkedIn, but I had a vision about 10 years ago of really displaying a different idea to the media and the press about what dentists do, because at the time the narrative was constantly about us being butchers or ripping people off or this negativity. And I was one of the first dentists to really approach the media and press and journalists and be like, hey, actually, this is what we do. Can I offer you this treatment? See how you feel. And they recognized that it was a beauty commodity, but also it made people feel good at the same time. And I think we're really recognizing it conversely, though, there is a real problem with body dysmorphia as well. And
Massively.
people have become really obsessed in every way, shape and form, you know, with their teeth, etc. So that's, you know, been a challenge.
But teeth is like a really accessible, it's kind of like a no-brainer. It's like so that with body image issues, social media is awful for it because we are like peddling this perfect body that really no one has, and it's usually AI generated anyway. But with teeth, the cost aside, if you can afford it, it's a no-brainer because it's not doing permanent damage to your body. You're not having to like go to the gym for a year to get that body. As long as you look after them, there's not that much maintenance. It's like a no-brainer. I'm obsessed with it, and like I want to get all my teeth done.
Great
Music
advocates.
Rhona's ears for sure. I've got one final question.
Anything.
What would be your biggest mistake that you've made in this journey? What comes to mind?
The one thing that comes to mind is a mistake I think we're making right now, which I struggle with, is I don't think we're thinking big enough.
It's always an issue. Always an issue.
I want to think, like, there are days where I'm like, what are we doing? Why are we worrying about the small things? Like, we got to think bigger. Like,
Don't sweat the small stuff.
Let's not talk about 30 million. Let's talk about 100 million.
Someone in the business needs to be saying that, and then someone in the business needs to be making sure.
Yeah, we had an amazing girl in finance who keeps us all level-headed. But I want to think really big and irrationally big, because if you look at the greatest entrepreneurs of all time across any industry, like Steve Jobs, he was absolutely off his rocker, and people would have said, you're crazy in what you're building. You're trying to build personal computers that are way more expensive, that are way more beautiful than anything else, but way more expensive and out of people's price range. Look what he built, right? So we've got to think differently, think bigger, think crazy.
Where do you think would be the next move away from matcha? Have you thought of that?
In our products, I mean, it's healthy energy on the cans and matcha on the powders. I think we'll look at, although I don't really want to because it's very saturated, like energy bars.
Yeah, I was going to say that makes sense, but I haven't seen matcha energy bars, to be fair.
We get approached by a lot of brands who want to do collabs. We did a chocolate bar with On Bar. We're looking at a couple other products, but the other thing is like matcha plus. What else can you do? The AG model of greens or all-in-one supplement in some sense. That's something I think we'll look at.
Yeah, we talked about.
I mean, matcha is very versatile. We could do it in pills. We could do it in gels. You can do it in espresso pods. We've just launched like 12 new products, so let's get those ones over the line and worry about what's next in like 6 months maybe.
Amazing. Levi, it's been so incredible talking to you. I'm so grateful you took
like
time out of your busy schedule to
good.
talk to us, and I'm definitely going to be ordering a load of these stuff. So
just we'll send you some, just whatever you need.
Wise beyond your years. It's nice to hear, how level-headed
yeah, no, literally. I'm like, how is he 29? I was a child at 29, But yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.